We're looking at Paul's letter to the Philippians.
It's the first city in Europe that Paul went to, and he went in response to a vision.
Well, I think it's the sort of thing. It is, classic Paul kind of stuff. Super dense, super rich. 1,000 application points. It would be easy to do probably 3 or 6 months of sermons on it. So, with all that amazing stuff, there are a handful of things that I think would be fun for you and I to talk about. But, in general, amazing little letter, 4 chapters. You've got tons of practical instruction. Don't grumble. Don't argue. Hey, you two, get along with each other. You've got a strikingly beautiful portrait of Jesus right in the middle.
Yeah.
Which is just, let me just read that really quick, just because you can't hardly go wrong reading it. It's almost like Paul saying, you guys, you got to have this kind of attitude. What is it like? Oh, it's like Jesus. And then he starts, maybe reciting a hymn, or I don't know. But
yeah, ancient poem.
Yeah, he says this in, I think it's chapter 2, verse 6, is, who being in the very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God has exalted him to the highest place and gave him a name that's above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Which it's almost like Paul just like, oh yeah, here, let's tuck that in there. It's a stunning, gorgeous picture of Jesus and his ministry, and the collaboration and common purpose of Jesus and the Father. And
awesome. This theme of humble yourself in order to be great. This is pretty cool.
So there all this cool stuff, and the verse that I like to skip over, chapter 1, verse 27, he says, and I read that and I go, serious? What it, actually done 85 to 90% of ideal. What does that look like? How do you conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel? It reminds me of Saving Private Ryan, where right at the end he goes, I don't know. But anyway, it's, Paul has no subtlety or no timidity about setting the bar pretty high for us. So
later on, he says, let us live up to what we have already attained. Kind of like if you're learning stuff, then you better be living it. You don't just learn stuff and then learn new stuff and learn stuff. So you have not always been a pastor. You were a missionary for a while.
Like quarter-time associate pastor at my church, and 3/4 time working, mobilizing for missions, helping Christians learn how to love Muslims, promoting church planting among Muslim people groups all over the place.
And you've also traveled and lived in lots of other places.
Yeah.
It is crazy how all of us can go from victim to oppressor in a fairly short period of time, and then probably vice versa again as well.
For sure, yeah.
So you spent a summer in Jordan, and then where else have you lived or been?
I spent 3 months in Bangkok, 3 months in Bombay, visited a bunch of places. We lived in Holland in the Netherlands for a couple years, and England for about half a year. England was, in a lot of ways, just the ideal. We lived in a neighborhood that was 95% Pakistani Muslim.
Oh, wow.
And but then you're in the midst of this unreached kind of demographic, but
all the conveniences.
You're still in Northern England. So,
well, I was going to discount your time in England. Like, well, obviously England wasn't missions, but you're saying in a way it was the best time.
Oh man, it was so good. And we had an amazing church there. It's a little Anglican church down the hill from our house. And where a lot of churches had moved out with the influx of Asians and from the 60s on, this church had made a very conscious decision. We're going to live out and give out the gospel of Christ in a Muslim neighborhood. And they were doing it. They did a homework club that was largely Pakistani kids from the local school. It seems like there may have been some kind of ladies' Bible study that involved Pakistanis as well.
Now your time in Amsterdam, of course, I'm acquainted with that because I brought a team whenever that would have been.
Long time ago.
Yeah, in a land far in a galaxy far, far away. Yeah, and you set us up, and we stayed in a youth hostel, and you encouraged us to go to a particular Muslim neighborhood in a sub community called Miterport. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong. And and we just went door to door and offered to pray for people, and found the Muslims in that neighborhood to be extremely gracious and kind, and they welcomed us. Occasionally, a holdover from a Dutch person would answer the door. A holdover from before.
What are you doing here?
And they were mad at us, like, we already have a religion. Why are you here? You know. And so I found the Muslims to be way more gracious than the Europeans that we ran into.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool.
Believe it. Oh, so good to have you guys there.
Yeah, that was fun. So, what of all the places you've been to, which one just would you say was the most unique or hit you the hardest? Or
I spent about 3 months in Bombay back when it was before Mumbai days. And I think that was culturally some of the most challenging, because you got so many people and so little evidence of the kingdom. It challenged me like pretty deep in my goal and my guts. What's the Greek word for that?
Splankna.
Splank. It boiled my splankna. You pass maybe 10,000 people walking on the sidewalk in a day's walking, and you go, odds are none of them know anybody who loves Jesus and has a relationship with him.
Yeah.